Jenson, Project Manager, Transparency International Latvia.
Hello, my name is Agnia Jenson, and I'm a Project Manager at Transparency International Latvia. And today I'll be your moderator. At the first, I will give a floor to each colleague to introduce themselves and also to say a few words about what is their observations in their field. We are a delegation in total 13 people from different NGOs, institutions, and also journalists. And here we are just today half of or part of the group. And I'll give a floor to my colleague Liga from Development Cooperation Platform of Latvia, and she will give a bigger brief of why we are here and what is our goals.
Thank you, Agnia. My name is Liga Rudzite, and I am from Latvian Platform for Development Cooperation. And this is a civil society organization. It's a platform that combines, brings together about 30 civil society organizations in Latvia that are either involved in development cooperation projects outside of EU mainly, or they are working with development education within Latvia. So bringing to people in Latvia global topics such as, for example, anti-corruption being one of them, or tax justice, or global justice, or human rights, and such topics which are, in our opinion, very global, but also very local, so the topics that are connecting the global and the local level, so that people would be able to see also beyond Latvia and to understand the processes that are happening around the world and why we should be part of it. Latvia lately, of course, has been increasingly interested in cooperating with Ukraine, and also especially in development cooperation. And we're also increasing our budget for development cooperation activities and projects. And this was one of the reasons and background why we decided to bring to Ukraine 13 in total representatives of civil society, but also a representative from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latvia, also 3 media representatives, and a person who was representing the Graduate School of Law, so also academic sector was represented here. And our aim was to meet different institutions and organizations in Ukraine who are working mainly on anti-corruption or EU integration topics and issues. And the reason for that is that one of the priority topics where Latvia has identified, government of Latvia has identified as a sphere where we can cooperate the best, or where we can really be useful to people in Ukraine, is exactly the field of anti-corruption. So with the hope and idea that these organizations that would be present here could also cooperate in the future on thinking about and developing projects with Ukrainian civil society, but also other sectors in the field of anti-corruption, plus their specific area of interest and expertise, that this could be something that could be beneficial for both sides in the end, eventually. So that was the rationale behind it, and we were very lucky to meet incredible people here, and great organizations and institutions and representatives, and learn a lot more about the what is happening in Ukraine in general. Of course, 4 days are very short time to learn everything, and that's probably just the beginning. But I think my colleagues will be able to tell you more about their specific findings here, and comment on the possibility of future cooperation and ideas, and what they have observed in general.
Thank you, Liga, and I will take floor, and I will start with the field of corruption and observations there. And then I will give floor to each of you. Basically, I would say corruption is everywhere, and Ukrainians already gave a great effort to start fighting corruption in systematic level. If we talk about corruption, we can always talk about very low level, a big level, and the stealing of the state. And I think here is in all levels. I think very important steps which we've seen is and received a very great feedback from a lot of people who we met that the establishment of anti-corruption office is in a good hands and in a good shape. But at the same time, a new Office of Prevention Corruption is in a big shadow, and there's something going wrong. And I hope this will not be an accident or a kind of a stop for this reform what you started. Very important as well is, or not very important, but where we've seen that as well, everybody mentioned the judge system, the justice system, and the corruption in judges, and also in the health, in field of health. That seems like a very hot topic, and it's at some moment it should be started to, we should start solving it. And being very short, I can also say that the corruption is always from two sides. One is giving and one is receiving. And a small corruption can be fight and should be fight from everybody. And I hope that with the help with mass media, with the anti-corruption organizations and other NGOs, and of course with the support of the state, there will be bigger intolerance against corruption here. Not giving bribes to police, not giving bribes to doctors, and to start step by step finding other solutions on receiving the services what they need to give by state money. With that, I will finish, and I'm open for questions, but I will give floor to my colleague.
Hi, I'm Davs Landorfs. I'm a journalist, used to work for the Latvian state television. Now I'm freelance, mainly in print. I do focus on conflict and post-conflict, so development, well, obviously I'm interested in that, and that's why I'm here. That's not my field of expertise. Nevertheless, it's been very interesting to learn about various factors and various issues that are present and on the agenda of Ukrainians right now. And one of the things that's been particularly interesting for me that we've learned during these 4 days is are the non-military consequences of the conflict in the east of the country. And those are, for example, the charity organizations receiving less funds because the donors are switching to assist military mainly, and the psychological assistance to the soldiers who return from fighting. And of course, especially the situation of IDPs, which is, unfortunately, in my opinion, very little known in other places outside of Ukraine and doesn't receive nearly as much attention as it should. And perhaps these are the issues that on the face value they don't necessarily have to do with corruption, but when I've spoken with the experts and people of knowledge about these issues, it goes down to many factors, but one thing it definitely goes down to is the lack of funds and the lack of capacity by the institutions, by the government to actually deal with those issues. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out the lack of capacity and the lack of funds. The government's money is directly connected to the corruption and to the system that is obviously not functioning as it should. And so I think it's been a very clear reminder of the very direct human cost that we sometimes don't think about, but it's very present, and that comes from the corruption issues, and that's how I say it's particularly important.
I'm Edith Kalniņa. I'm a board member of European Women's Lobby since 2010, and on my way to meeting Children's Rights Umbrella this morning in Kiev, I was passing prosecutor's office, which is next door to not-for-profit, and I saw a lot of expensive cars parked around that. For me, that's a pretty clear signal. And I heard as well some stories related to expensive clocks and cars of prosecutors. as well by my not-for-profit colleagues. So that was my first observation this morning, and I hope that when I come in 5 years to Kiev, I will see a little bit different picture. But what I will share some of my observations and findings these days. First, I was asked by my women's human rights colleagues here in Ukraine to call again attention of European Union on situation of Nadia Savchenko, and as well call for urgent release. As we know, the court has started again. And women's human rights activists here in Ukraine are very concerned about her life and health. And I checked the website of High Representative Federica Mogherini of European Union, and actually I saw the last message on Nadia Savchenko case from the spring this year. So we will, from European Women's Lobby side, we will call attention of her again to put our forces together to free Ms. Savchenko on humanitarian grounds and release her from prison, and to put Minsk agreement in life. Another thing, what I noticed is gender equality issues and women's human rights issues are not highly on political agenda, so they are somewhere very deep. So there's a lot of new NGOs sparkling and born, and they have their offices very city center and downtown, but they do not have women's human rights on their agenda. So a very good focus. So we hope that there will be more focus. We see what I saw as well was strong expertise of local human rights activists. So definitely there is no need for EU consultants to come and live on Marriott and give advice. Expertise is here in Ukraine, and so it's just about having help and using local expertise. As well, my learning was that they want to learn, and we have possibilities for cooperation because Ukrainians are learning from countries which are culturally alike and close, and there were a lot of examples from learning from Georgia, and as well looking at the Baltics, and as well Latvia could be the place where learnings could be taken and adapted to Latvian. And looking on the potential areas for cooperation, we were looking at the particular regions and oblasts, and at the very small not-for-profits and growing their capacity, and as well working with volunteers. So what my observation is that after Maidan, you have as well a spark of volunteer movement, but volunteers, especially to work with children and women's issues, should be trained and educated. So that's another focus. And another area of potential cooperation is around increasing self-esteem and leadership skills of young women, and having mentoring programs as well around that. So there were great examples, and I got a number of names of young female leaders who are now advisors to the ministers and heads of agencies and offices, who actually are alumni of women's human rights leadership programs here in Kiev. So definitely we will invest into growing the new generation of women's human rights activists. And so my finding is, and I hope that there will be a lot of youngsters willing to move into serving as public servants and working for the government. I was a little bit sad yesterday when I was meeting a young generation of politicians who, so when I asked them whether they would be willing to join and become civil servants if the salary would be increased from 100 euros a month up to, let's say, 700 or 800 euros a month. And only one guy was saying that he is considering to join prevention and anti-corruption office. So I would love. So when I'm here next time in Kiev, I hear more young voices saying that that they are ready to join a public service and make changes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Agnia. I'm representing Latvia Corporate Social Responsibility Platform. We work with businesses and NGOs, and our main focus is about sustainability and CSR value introduction in the private sector and society. First of all, I would say that for me, the Ukraine and Kiev as surrounding and the place where to live and stay, I think it's gorgeous. I'm very surprised and very happy that it was a chance for us to be here. And I will definitely go back and say that it's a nice place to come and visit. That's the first thing. Another thing, I found out that there are a strong, hungry civil society. This hungry civil society, I think, if you look back at Latvia case, it was in the 90s, I would say. And my concern, or we discussed that how to keep up civil society to be still hungry and pushy and demanding for the change. There were different ideas how to do that. I mean, maybe we'll come back with that. Another thing, what I noticed that civil society is working parallelly, the government. So it's like two worlds, two systems, and Europe some way have integrated all these two systems, that these consultancies are not because the civil society is angry or disappointed, but because that's normal process. To reform the civil society and government cooperation, or to push forward laws that supports that, it's something what already today you should do, maybe if I can say that as an advice, because after a while, if the pressure will not be so strong, the government maybe can look in a back direction. About reforms, we were introduced with, I think, manual with 62, if I'm not wrong, reforms, and we looked through and we understood that they are missing some horizontal approach. For example, sustainability issues, corporate social responsibility, and I'm not talking about philanthropy, about private sector, I'm talking about gender equality, these other groups of society, veterans, for example, what will happen after conflict, how they will be introduced in employment, and other issues. Like, of course, they are small, but are really crucial and actually connect society for the support of the change. Another thing, what we understood that you don't need anymore maybe expertise what to do, but you will need expertise about how practically to do it, how to introduce reforms, how to implement them in everyday life. And I think that's somewhere where we can share our experiences, methods and guidelines, how we did it. I think the focuses for cooperation is about, I was meeting with CSR Ukraine, the same organization as we are, and the other organizations we represent in CSR Europe. There are 42 like us in Europe. And we discussed about possibilities how private sector would comply to the anti-corruption guidelines, ethics, and everything else. And then I understood that maybe there is not enough discussion about how public purchases can be given, or any money from the government, what is connected with private and public partnership, to the businesses that are responsible. It means, do you know what is responsible business? Do you have any criteria? And that's public purchase would be something where you can start to introduce the debate. Another one is about state enterprises. Again, if they are governed, they are governed with the best practices, with the best governance laws, then of course they can serve as an example that private companies can look after. This is what we actually did only 1 year ago. And we have gone through a lot of changes, and again, we can be a help how to do it step by step. Another one is for the business, what we were told that how to enter another market, how to comply to the association agreement, how to comply for the culture in Western markets. And I'm telling here that standardization is not only helping you to go into the Western market, but to diverse the markets in other parts of the world. That would be the, again, one focus. And then I had a thought about what will happen with the civil organizations, what will happen with the social initiatives, what will happen with reforms when the donation money will end, or donors will not have anymore so much focus. And then when we were discussing about possibilities how to raise salaries and everything, then there was a lot of expectancy from donors, but I would say that, and we discussed with all the team, that it's actually tax collection. Do we have enough, do you have enough already debates about how to tax are collected? Are they enough? Are this reform promoting economic growth, or is it a burden? Or how do you see that? Because the salaries will not be paid generally by donors in long term. I don't know which side your government will choose, to have funds or to have support or projects. We don't know that. But what we see, looking at our case, that there should be a strong debate already what we'll do after. Support after donations, after the focus of media, economy will change. Yes, so I really wish you will not lose civil society, the focus, that you will introduce all the systematic changes, and we are here to help if you need practical guidance, and not to preach but to walk the talk. Thank you.
My name is Henriks Dunsevic. I am president of Latvian Traders Association. In the same time, as business representative of NGOs, I am advisor by main European institution, European Parliament, European Commission, and European Economic and Social Committee. In Ukraine, I am 20 years in different private NGOs and governmental projects. In this year, I know yet Ukrainian language. I could hear, read, but I could not speak. Excuse me. But to better explain what my observations and my proposals or visions, could I explain it in Russian? Yes? Okay, thank you.
I am prepared to touch upon two major issues in the sphere of anti-corruption, which I visualize here in this country. Number one, let's say the lack of the supervision over this public procurement. The normal systems can be created given the certain levels of the authority. We have a small country, but there's a supervision over the procurement, called the Procurement Bureau, where you can send and submit any kind of claims or complaints. And also those commissions are the representatives of NGOs, which allows to decrease the level of corruption where the procurement is disputable. Where procurement is not disputable, we can work in different, take different steps. First of all, we excluded through the legislation the possibility to interpret the terms and conditions of procurement for a specific customer, and we exclude the possibility of participation in the procurement of those enterprise companies who do not pay sufficient amount of taxes. I believe that this big amount of money which is taken from public budget, this is one of the major reasons why you cannot improve the social conditions of life here, why the war is still going on. When we dealt with the procurement purchases of military equipment, which could be purchased in the normal trade, not only the military, let's say, trade system, and they could offer the prices 3 times lower than the prices paid by the government. This speaks of the corruption which is present here on the one hand. What we discussed before I took the floor, actually I can see that there is no official good attitude to non-governmental organization, not in any kind of authority which could give the chance for the non-public organizations to NGOs to take part in the implementation of different novelties. And again, if you are talking about the 1/3 of the representatives are not the NGOs representatives, are private researchers who deal with the issues, and is governed by the person who deals with American-Ukrainian relationship, though we are talking about European Union relations, and the government and the ministry neglected that. This is not our business, let them do whatever they want. So then that's all we wanted to say. Maybe one more example, how specifically participated in anti-corruption with the organization which deals with anti-corruption issues. We came up with a project, Small Islands of Honesty, where the company's enterprise declared that they were not going to give bribes or take bribes. And we actually conducted such an action and was successful, but was successful because the government supported us, especially where we could not do anything when some enterprises demanded some bribes. The government actually supported us, and they supervised the different transactions. It did everything possible for the transaction to be honest.
If I may, very short points, but I've been quite impressed with the professionality of people that we have met over these days, which is, I think, a very good sign that people that are actually able to make change and create change. These are people that really have both the passion but also the knowledge and the skills on how to do it. So that's one thing. Another thing that I think is directly connected to that as well, just the amount of influence that the civil society at the moment has in Ukraine is also good for the changes and for the reforms. But at the same time, that's something that I would say needs to be kept in mind, that of course initiative and also individual responsibility for what's going on in Ukraine is great and important, but still government has to be the main responsible, it has to take the main responsibility for what is going on in the country and how it is governed and how the reforms are being implemented and what reforms are taking place. And also anti-corruption should be the main responsibility of the government, and they should be the ones who would make sure that this is something that is worked on even on the grassroots level. And so I would say that people very much need to learn to ask for this responsibility to be with the government. So to ask for government to act upon it, and instead of saying, okay, it's easier actually for myself to do this this step, but to go kind of not the easy way, but continue pushing and pushing the government for these things to be done. And in terms of the aspects that I think Latvia can also cooperate very much with Ukraine on, one of the things I think is that we can offer also this support on the grassroots level, and we can definitely engage more on in the work in regions where I think right now perhaps a lot of support is needed, especially in the regions in the east, perhaps where there is a bit less of support happening also from the government side, from what I've understood. But at the same time, e-governance could be something that that Latvia is very capable of, or something IT and e-governance in general is something that is very strong side for Latvia in general. And we see that this is also an option or a way to help with fighting corruption. So making the procedures easier means that people are able to actually work on correct procedures instead of saving time. In order to save time, I choose the more corrupt way. Also campaigns, which is something that Latvia has done a lot in the past 10-20 years even. So public campaigns on anti-corruption to change these individual patterns of action of people. But still, I would, even with all this individual action and empowerment, I think an incredibly important part needs to be done by government and by civil servants, which are in the government, and this pressure needs to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Liga. And last point for me, I would like to emphasize the use, which is. It's not just a simple use, but also the youth organizations and youth participation. And in terms of crisis, we might forget like a soft skills and developing of soft skills, or everybody's focusing on infrastructure and big reforms. But I think it's very important that donors also support, as already my colleagues mentioned, the civil society actors and the development of their skills and knowledge and experience enlarged, that they are able and capable to cooperate in the implementation of different reforms, and the use also in fighting against corruption. We cannot fight with the maybe older like pensioners who will. I mean, they will die sooner or later, but it maybe sounds very, very cynical. But we need to invest in young people who will be, who are agents of change. And here I seen, from talking with you and also on the streets with people, and reading the articles of already what's happening in the last few years, it's amazing and incredible how young people care. And I really wish you not to lose this energy. And before giving a floor to my colleague from Transparency International Ukraine, also observation is that you have quite few organizations which work with corruption issue. In Latvia, we're basically two. One is working on research, and one is more like Transparency International, who's work with the government and also with public engagement. But here's like at least more than 10, which mentioned in different meetings, and it means that this is definitely a problem here. But I'll give a floor to my colleague from Transparency International Ukraine to give maybe some comments on reflection of what we observed here.
Hello, my name is Sofia Kovac, and I'm a representative of Transparency International Ukraine. First of all, I would like to thank you, all of my colleagues sitting here at the table, because you know, it's great to care for your country, but it's even greater to care for your neighbors. And this is probably what should be valued the most in our world today. I also would like to thank you for great observations. I really liked what Agnia said, that we have a hungry society. Yes, we do have a hungry, demanding society right now, but even more what we have, it's what each of you said, we have corruption that is everywhere. And what is even worse, we have a government that, I dare say, does not have enough of political will to help NGOs and help this hungry, demanding society to fight the corruption around us. Nevertheless, I do not want to be so negative about it, because there are a lot of projects right now that NGOs are carrying out and that are really making a difference. First of all, there has been said a lot about public procurement. I don't know if you know about it, but Profile Ministry and Transparency International and a package of other profile anti-corruption organizations have launched a specific project on public procurement that is called Prozoro, where you can go online and actually monitor all the public procurement that is going on in Ukraine. And more state institutions and more businesses are using this tool. So I guess we're gonna have a great change in this sphere. Another thing that is developing in Ukraine right now, it's e-governance. How my colleagues have said that everything has to be simple. We do have a lot of bureaucracy, and here is where corruption is born. So in this aspect, we also have some changes. As for Transparency International, we do work, well, we have just launched a big company on work with whistleblowers. Because in Ukraine and in all former Soviet countries, there is a problem because whistleblowers are not valued by the society and actually are not understood by it. So we do have this program where we take information from whistleblowers and then deal with it, help people, help people deal with it further. We do monitor the declarations of public officials right now, and there is also a big of a deal about this because you know that there will be a special anti-corruption institution that will be called National Agency on Prevention of Corruption, and that will actually deal with this monitoring of public officials' lifestyle and also declarations. So we have launched this thing also. Agnia just said that we do have a lot of organizations in Ukraine, a lot of NGOs that deal with anti-corruption. And I would tell you that this is actually a good thing because Ukraine is really big. And as you have said just before, we have corruption everywhere. And you can see it just in everyday life, like you said just before our meeting, in the streets, buying anything and stuff like this. So together with our partners, it's centered on prevention of corruption and renovation package of reforms. We are greatly involved in launching the anti-corruption institutions. Our colleagues deal with, for the most part, they deal with the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, that is more of an law enforcement institution that will deal with investigation of grant corruption. And if they were here, they would probably tell you more about it. For now, Transparency International is greatly involved in the conflict around National Agency on Prevention of Corruption, and we hope that eventually it'll get started. So for right now, as Liga has said right now, we are trying our best to be both a helper to our government, to provide great assistance and expertise, and push the government as well. But as someone, I guess it was Agnia who said that we do not, Ukraine does not need no more expertise, but we do need implementation. So I guess right now it's what are we more the most focused on. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. And we can open the floor for the questions from the audience.
Yeah, we have some questions, please. My name is Alexandra. I'm from the Anti-Corruption Action Center, and I would probably just want to say a few remarks, especially about what Henrik was saying. I don't know whether it's better in Russian or English. What? Both. Okay, so я хотела бы поднять вопрос о том, что
I would like to raise the issue that the public organizations do not monitor the tender. Our organization monitors the tenders, and over the last 2 years, to the tune of 3 billion hryvnia, we actually returned to the budget. So we actually terminated some of the contracts and returned money to budget. We have a biggest problem in the sphere of corruption, combat corruption, our immune system, our law enforcement bodies. Each time, whenever journalists, let's say, find the news that the tender was too blown prices, for example, in case for some minimum, they decided to repair the roads in Lugansk region, and number of those roads increased as compared to last year. So it was very interesting to hear about that when those regions were occupied, and all of a sudden twice as many roads have to be repaired. After our journalist investigation, nobody, not a single law enforcement agency launched any case. So we had to collect information and send to the General Prosecutor's Office and prove them that there was a violation, and they decreased this, they decreased the money, the 35% of the for the state procurement. But this is indicative case when neither of the law enforcement agency even expressed their desire to start the case. We complain, we appeal against the decision, for example, allocation of this or another some money. We send this information to the General Prosecutor's Office. They say no, this is not interesting us. This is not a criminal case. We have to apply to address the courts. The courts are very corrupted. If we are talking about the case of Kolmoisky, oligarch Kolmoisky, this is absolutely unrealistic to do something like that. So my proposal, he said that we have the public sector separately and the government separately, because in many cases the government tries to sell reforms based on some smaller indices or indicators. For example, we had the reform, police reform, but it's not police reform, because we are talking about 900 people out of several thousand. So we have the same leaders, we have the same managers, and nobody removes them from their offices, corrupted persons. I would like to address the international community. Whenever you're involved with some negotiations, it can impact our government. Gives a KPI specific. And then, for example, some people in the street is good. What about the top officials? And Sophia gave us an example about the launching about anti-corruption bureau. Only owing to the international pressure, that law was approved, and they introduced over 103 amendments, and which actually nullified the whole draft law, and they said no, do not try to pull our leg, because you introduce some amendments, and well, that helped a lot, to until the immune system in this country doesn't operate, we won't be able to do anything. I know you can influence, especially the Transparency International have this opportunity to do that, so please raise that issue. Very important. It's very good that they take advice from the public sector, but we just running away and crying that everything is bad in this. But we are involved in the development of some of the project, but we are not going to support the idea to sell some of the things for the reform. This is what is going on here. Thanks a lot, Alexandra, for this very detailed comment what's going on in Ukraine. Any other questions? I have a remark. Alexander Kninsky, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, Alexander, he represents here the public at large, But my question, you said that the public in no way is involved for the monitoring or control in the sphere of state procurement, public procurement. This was I was surprised to hear that. I'm not going to defend the government, but the Prozora transparency and the corporate rights were delegated to Transparency International. At least Maxim Fedor mentioned that this unique project in the world with the open code of public procurement, which was created by volunteers, which is actively exists on the volunteer basis. This transparent creature, so to say. Alexander, you may say, talk about that. Yes, the law was not voted for, which could change all the terms and conditions of the public procurement and actually reboot this whole system. But I don't think this is an objective assessment that our public sector is not involved in this sphere. Perhaps this is one of the few reforms which, as Alexander said, that we make small steps. It's something which could be solved, but this is small positive which we have here. So this is the problem. The public actually developed the draft law and they submitted, but they do not want to vote for that. Though all the international organization donors, this is being sold as if we carried out the reform in public procurement, and the system works with the pre-threshold sums, but according to Min infrastructure, they would like to reach saving of 300 million hryvnia. The same for the Ministry of Economic Development. Sorry to take this kind of alien to me role of the defender of the government, which should be objective. Maybe Transparency International would like to comment.
That it's better to talk, like it's better for them still in English. I guess I understand what my colleague from Anti-Corruption Action Center is talking about, because the Prozora platform that we have launched right now, like it's great. But from what I hear from, especially from the regions, and for the regions, this is especially actual, because people really do not first of all, they do not know about it. It's for NGOs and for active people who are always in the spot, you know, like they keep track of what is happening in Ukraine. But ordinary people, the society itself, they are either not interested or maybe not interested enough, you know. And it is, I think that it is again our task, the task of NGOs like all of us here, to tell people so that they can get more interested and then monitor what is going on in public procurement. But again, it's great that we have this platform so that we actually at least have a tool that can be used by these ordinary people who can just go online and get acquainted with everything that is going on. Thank you.
Александр, мне просто очень приятно видеть такую сильную энергию, которая ходит от вас.
It's my pleasure to see this high energy which you have. We have about 180 vacancies. Are you going to join the public structure in order to achieve some changes in Ukraine? They need people like you. But my question is, would you agree to go there and work there so to achieve some changes? You know, I support the theory that we have to go everywhere and work everywhere in the team. Unfortunately, what I can see in the executive branch or in others public system, if just one person joins them, he's being devoured, so to say. So me and my colleagues are going to get another. Let's say the judiciary education, because I am political scientist, and we are going to study legal science, you know. And yeah, it's ridiculous today to talk about that because you said 100 euro. We did not get even that one. When we are, for example, we had 2,500 people who applied to become detectives, and nobody even was interested to get acquainted with the background of those people. 70% of those people were former SBU guys or prosecutor's office or militia. Unfortunately, there are just few people among those who are honest people, you know. So we are trying to find information about each of those persons. Sometimes you find very interesting information about those people. Very often, in the commission, for example, when people come into for an interview and they say, "We read your declaration. You have the vehicle which costs 800,000 green." I said, "Oh, I forgot. Okay, goodbye." He would say, "We undertook the responsibility. If you mean what you mean." Many young people and volunteers, they are going to live on their own money and join the authorities, but they need the strong belief, if you will. And there are some guys who tried to do something to introduce some changes and transformations. I'm going to speak English.
Я хочу... I would like to come back to my comment, and I think what Henrik, I know how you... what Henrik said about public purchases. That's if the system or the law, it's not signed, but still it's there, or the database is there, it doesn't mean that criteria is followed by best practices. For example, how to choose best company to be the one what is getting any kind of money from the government. And I think that should be both side dialogue. The companies are complaining that they are not having enough money to start over, and because of the fall of the Russian market. But in the same time, they say it's not possible to get into the public purchases because there are corruption. So how to be enough trustful company? There should be criteria. And then you can give money to the companies. And I think what you said is about, again, mechanisms how to control, how to complain, and it's about implementation steps, what we are talking about. We are not saying or preaching that you need reforms. You know what kind of reforms you need. We are talking about details, what can give you the results.
Я немножко дополню тоже.
I'm going to add a bit what we did in our country. Perhaps you can do that without very special efforts. Perhaps we agreed with the self-governance about specific procurement, which is standardized. We have to provide or draft the guidelines. For example, procurement and services for nourishment of children, or for example, procurement of papers. And if there is the guidelines, then the top body which actually covers the whole branch or the sector, you will avoid the situation when somebody will tune the procurement, so to say, to a specific company. We will deal with the people who is interested in honest dealings. You know, we have another problem. We are talking about guidelines. We have those, but they try to remove those. You know, in the guidelines in 1963 or whatever, I don't know. I don't know which language to speak. The majority of the requirements for the suppliers, they are based on some laws and some kind of the standards, regulatory acts of 1960s, 1970s. And today, if you're talking about there's very detrimental those people who like to go to the market. We are trying to work on the package of regulation. Maybe it was not very specific. The guidelines we are talking about. This is already the prepared let's say, example of procurement. So we have the technical documentation in place, for example, for some kind of procurement. If we're talking about purchases, the A4 format of paper, they can, for example, this paper must meet certain requirements. There is a specific supplier deals with this kind of paper, so this is kind of could be a corruption for money laundering. I'm not talking about that. We are talking about the same requirements for the children nourishment. You also have some requirements for the recipes or the nourishing substances. If we have all these, then we should not give order for a specific company, order which will ensure not really high quality nourishment, nourishing substances. For example, we had the cases when they use the, let's say, the concentrated food, and they use that for the nourishment of children. This is not good. Well, we are trying to do something about the documentation. To avoid 3 million different papers which you have to submit. In 90% of the cases, they throw it to the companies because they deprive the companies of the right to computers because you did not use stapler, for example, for the papers. We have to determine the maximum papers which are required and maximum requirements imposed on the bidder. I would like to share our experience. Maybe you can prompt us. If we are talking about the purchase of the medications, we have the problems when we address international companies and say, guys, we are going to support you publicly and monitor each tender, but please get involved directly without any agencies or intermediaries. Just directly to the auctions or to tenders. And very often we can see that the companies don't want to shoulder the risks and deal with the government. I can sell the same medications to the intermediary, and they will already take the responsibility, shoulder the responsibility for all kind of kickoffs and whatever else, And we cannot invent anything but umbrella contracts, and we cannot persuade any international organization. We have just only Jenson, GlaxoSmithKline, who are directly involved in auctions or tenders. All the rest, even big time brands, they use intermediaries or agencies. If you compare the price for the medication in Ukraine and the neighboring countries, the difference is 100%. We are going to talk with our largest company. Maybe they will agree to be directly involved in this. We have to find out how the medication export to Ukraine. Yes.
Slowly goes for already dialogue, and I think we can continue also after this official panel. But to summing up, I would like to say thank you, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, for inviting us to share our experience and hosting us already earlier this week. Thank you. And thank you all organizations who were ready with us and share your experience. And we are ready to cooperate. If there's something we can share, I'm sure we can also learn from you, because just the people who are doing and on a way of cooperation, we can learn a lot from you guys as well. And as I already mentioned before, don't lose your energy. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, too. We appreciate your kind words, and we think Transparency International Latvia and Transparency International Ukrainian Anti-Corruption Action Center for passionate debates. As you have said, you can continue and you should continue offline, and you should continue cooperation.
This will bring us to the end of our briefing, and generally speaking, it's the last briefing or work day today at UCMC. Our schedule will appear on our site by the end of this day.
Anti-Corruption Action Center satapt. Bija plānā, ka viņi nāks uz reanimation package of reforms, bet viņām vienkārši.
We wanted to meet them, but they didn't arrive to the meeting to meet us.
We we had to meet Anti-Corruption Action Center,
Yeah.
Daria herself, and she promised to be there, but finally with all the super...
Busy
you
agenda.
didn't
We
meet?
didn't meet because I think we could learn, like they are super active as well. Like